guys, my name is Beau Reed. Own Papa Chop's Rod and Reel Repair. I'm a tournament angler. It all starts out of my kayak for me. About a month, 3 to 4 weeks ago, I started pre-fishing for a kayak angler tournament series in Texas, and kind of had to juggle that with some pre-fishing for TTZ up on Lake LBJ on the 30th. So I got in like four or five really good trips, which all progressively got better. I knew just to compete and do well, I had to put that time in on the water, and I kind of started out throwing bigger baits, faster moving baits, faster falling baits. As I progressed through the days that I was pre-fishing, I kind of went back every night and redid my tackle and kind of tuned it into something a little bit more where I think I could yield a few more fish on tournament day. So by the end of those 4 or 5 trips, I had gotten down to just a few baits, and really one area that I knew that I had to be the first to get to if I was gonna do any good at all. So tournament morning, get there, they cut us loose. I start hauling ass to the discharge. I knew that I had to stay in the discharge. I had to battle everybody else and kind of play defense most of the day while trying to remain productive. But I knew that if I could get there first and get back there, I knew that I could hold it and potentially do well. At least get my limit. I knew that I could get a limit back there, a measurable fish. I only caught 1 under all day. So just really what I caught all of my fish on are sitting right here in front of me. As soon as I got there, I started throwing this Sammy, which is really funny because I kind of just did some research and learned how to rig them and throw them like 2 days ago. You know, it's funny, my whole life I've been fishing this damn bait wrong. Been throwing it on braid and mono, braid and fluoro, braid and mono. You know, I just never was able to figure it out until I watched a video on bassresource.com. It told me I needed a Phenix Maxim medium heavy 610 rod for the action, and I needed copolymer line. So I hadn't really tried copolymer. I've tried it in the past, but I guess I just wasn't smart enough to know how to use it properly. But once I went, you know, the first cast that I made with this bait using that setup, I just noticed a huge difference, and everything said, wow. It just worked so efficiently. It stayed on top. I guess it worked how it was supposed to work when you fish it how it's supposed to be fished. So it worked. All my 3 biggest fish all came on this first thing. So, you know, which isn't normally a wintertime bait, but I figured I would give it a shot if I had some good water to work with in the morning on a power plant lake. So that's why I went with this. Well, one of those fish, when I brought it into the boat, spit this green Zoom fluke out. So not really big into throwing watermelon seed and red flake, but I guess I should start. But so that kind of cued me in that they're chasing shad. So I immediately switched over to Old Faithful that I've been throwing on some of these deep rocky reservoirs like Lake Travis and Buchanan and Canyon Lake. You know, it's really weird because I've always known that, you know, out on Travis, a light line and a smoked grub and an 1/8 ounce jig head was just dynamite. So I figured I'd kind of try to adapt it to my style of fishing. So I found this H&H saltwater 1/8 ounce saltwater jig head, and I bought these Super Fluke Juniors. This is my backup. I actually prefer the paddle tail. It's what's been actually most productive for me. Thankfully I had this other bag of these straight tails, and they really worked well. It must have matched the hatch well because I caught well over 20 fish yesterday. So that worked well. And what I thought was going to work better was black and blue, black blue flake Yamamoto Senkos. And I actually had a 100-inch stringer on my last trip, on my last pre-fishing trip out there, just on dead sticking these Senkos in the discharge. And really it seemed like every time I would work a bait in that current, I wouldn't really get any bites. It all seemed to happen on its own. You know, when I would make that right cast and that current would grab it and just let it do its thing. But if I wasn't constantly feeding it line, you know, I wasn't getting those strikes. And once I started dialing that in and feeding that line, you know, I started catching those fish. But even though I did catch those fish, I had no clue that the fish were even on the hook until I actually started taking up slack to see if I was snagged or not. So, you know, it was a very light bite. It was raining, it was cold, it was windy. There was I think 3 or 4 bass boat tournament, or two or three bass boat tournaments and one kayak tournament all on Lake Bastrop. You know, there was 147 anglers on the kayak angler side, and there was, you know, probably another 60 boats out there from the other bass boat tournaments. And, you know, I saw a lot of people go up and fish the discharge. And I saw, you know, it seemed like all day long, I saw 5 or 6 boats in there sitting on a few spots, and, you know, 5 or 6 kayaks. So it was a pretty tight fish, you know, it was a pretty tight place to fish. But, you know, it was just funny because I probably only saw 1 or 2 other fish get caught out of that entire discharge all day. And I probably had 14 come out of the discharge alone. Even after I left and went and roamed around like an idiot for a little while, and then came back to just try it one last time for a kicker fish. And you know, I can't even when I came back, I caught a couple more fish, and you know, it was all absolutely and totally dead sticking this Yamamoto Senko, or throwing this swimming super fluke on an 1/8 ounce saltwater jig head and just dead sticking them, feeding them line, feeding them line, until I really didn't even know where the bait was anymore. But lo and behold, it was working. So I was pretty excited for yesterday. Ended up taking 5th out of 147 anglers. Thought I was going to do better, but you know what? I tried as hard as I could. You know, did the best I could. Now it's on to re-rigging everything for TTZ on the 30th. But you know, it just comes to show that the more pre-fishing that you do, the better you're going to do on tournament day. You know, just from my pre-fishing alone, this was all the tackle that I was able to leave behind on tournament day, and this was all that I brought. So it really worked out well. You got to put that time in on the water. So I'm sure you'll be hearing from me before the 30th when we start heading up to LBJ. So we'll see you when we win 10 grand. Later.